chapters from 7 to 12 also is a further comprehension of how he is the supreme absolute truth. So if you see philosophically, first 12 chapters of the Ādi-līlā, major portion Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has dedicated in first establishing that who Lord Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu is, who is Nityanand Prabhu, who is Advait Prabhu, and who are the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because when we go to Mayapur and we will be visiting those pastime places and we'll be hearing about the personalities, we should have clarity in our heart and conviction that who these personalities are. So it is an attempt. Let us see how much we are able to do. But I will try from today till Friday. Saturday I'll be traveling. So we have 5 days to at least try and cover the first chapter. Jayo Jayo Śrī Caitanya, Jayo Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jayo Jayo Śrī Caitanya, Jayo Nityananda, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So mainly I will be reading and very few places I will be discussing. So we will begin from Srila Prabhupada's lifetime project was to present Srimad Bhagavatam to the English-speaking world. That was the prime instruction of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur always emphasized that whenever you have money, you print book. And Prabhupada's most chosen project was to present Srimad Bhagavatam to the English-speaking world. But in 1970s, when Srila Prabhupada had reached more than 5th canto, Prabhupada stopped translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he gave the Caitanya-Caritāmṛta translation. Some of our leading acharyas now, Prabhupada's followers, disciples, they were mentioning that Prabhupada knew that even if he could not complete Srimad Bhagavatam, which eventually he could not, he could only give translation up to the 14th chapter of the 10th canto. But Prabhupada could empower his disciples to complete his Srimad Bhagavatam translation. But Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, Prabhupada thought that there is no one who could give the proper presentation and the purpose of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. So Prabhupada stopped Srimad Bhagavatam, and in between Prabhupada gave Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, and it was very revolutionary. In just 18 months, the entire Caitanya-Caritāmṛta was presented. Thanks to Srila Prabhupada's dedicated disciple, mainly Rameshwar Prabhu and his team. For 18 months, they almost did not sleep. Prabhupada never slept because Prabhupada was giving translation. But his followers also, they were so committed to please Srila Prabhupada. So let us begin. So I'll start from first line of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. Srila Prabhupada says, this Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, Prabhupada in his dedication says, presented to my friends and devotees who like to read. So if we want to have Srila Prabhupada on our side as an ever well-wishing friend, and if we want to be a devotee, then what we have to do? We have to read Srila Prabhupada's book. Who like to read my books, Prabhupada is saying very specifically, presented to my friends and devotees who like to read my books, and who approached me to request that I render the great Caitanya-Caritāmṛta into English. In his forward, Srila Prabhupada says that Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is the principal book on the life and teachings of Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So there are 3 principal books the first and the foremost principal book on the life of Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the biography, is Śrī Caitanya Bhagavad, which is presented by Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. And he is the same personality. He is Vyasadeva. Like Vyasadeva has given Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he has given the entire description of Krishna's pastime and activities. The same Vyasadeva appeared as Vrindavan Das Thakur, and he has given Chaitanya Bhagavat. The second book which was presented was Lochan Das Thakur, which is Chaitanya Mangal. But Caitanya-Caritāmṛta is very unique, and Prabhupada chose amongst the three books only Caitanya-Caritāmṛta to present. Prabhupada did not give Chaitanya Mangal, neither Chaitanya Bhagavat. Chaitanya Bhagavat is most popular in Gaudiya Vaishnava. But Shri Kaviraj Goswami has so very systematically and very deliberately, he has given the tattva more than the lila. Because in Kali Yuga, people do not understand the tattva. Tattva means the truth, the essential truth. And Prabhupada wanted to emphasize that without understanding the truth, the tattva, one can never enter into the lila. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the pioneer of a great social and religious movement that began in India about 500 years ago. That has directly and indirectly influenced the subsequent course of religious and philosophical thinking, not only in India, throughout the world. That Śrī Caitanya's influence has spread so far is due to large part of the efforts of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The present work's translator and commentator and the founder Acharya, spiritual guide of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This forward is given by the publishers, by the BBT people. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is thus a figure of great historical significance. However, our conventional method of historical analysis, that of seeing a man as a product of his time, fails here. Sri Krishna Chaitanya is a personality who transcends the limited scope of historical settings. Why I am reading this? Because most of the time we skip. We directly jump into the verses, into the chapters. Very important how we should approach. The chief historical sources for the life of Sri Krishna Chaitanya are the Karchas, diaries kept by Murari Gupta and Swarup Damodar Goswami. So whatever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela was performed in Navadip, it has been noted by his associate called Murari Gupta. We will go to his house. Murari Gupta's house, he is in Antardvip. So he was a physician and he maintained all the kadachas. Kadachas means the loose notes or the loose papers. And when Mahaprabhu took sannyas, he went to Puri. At that time in Puri he was accompanied by Swarup Damodar Goswami. So Ādi-līlā is based on Sri Murari Gupta's Kadacha, and the Madhya-līlā and the Anta-līlā is based on Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami's. Murari Gupta, physician and close associate of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, recorded extensive notes for the first 24 years of his life, culminating in his initiation into the renounced order, sannyas. So all the Navadip Lila is first 24 years before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. That is the principal source of it is Murari Gupta's, it is called the Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Kavya. It is in Sanskrit, Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Kavya. The event of the rest of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's 48 years were recorded in the diary of Swarup Damodar Goswami, another of his intimate associate. So that is mainly principally in Puri. Sri Caitanya-Caritāmṛta is divided into three sections called Leelas, a word that literally means pastimes. The Ādi-līlā. Adi means the beginning. Counting the early period of Lord Chaitanya's pastime. This is till age 24, till Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. The Madhya-līlā, recounting the middle period. That is, Madhya-līlā basically is the most extensive, because after taking sannyas for first 6 years, from the age of 24 till the age of 30, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did extensive traveling from Navadip, Puri to Vrindavan. He also went to South India. Gamana Gamana Leela. So that is recorded in the Madhya Leela. And 1 minute. Yeah. And the Anta Leela recounting the final period. Actually, there are two sections only. If you see, if you will read, so it is the Ādi-līlā and the Śrī Leela. But the Śrī Leela, Adi means the beginning, that is first 24 years, and the Śrī is the next 24 years. So the next 24 years is again divided by Srila Kaviraj Goswami in two sections. Madhya Leela is all his traveling and preaching, 6 years. That is most extensive. That is Prabhupada has presented in 5 volumes. Ādi-līlā is in 2 volumes. Madhya Leela for 6 years is in 5 volumes. And Anta Leela is his last 18 final years, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained secluded in Gambhira. So that is the Anta Leela, recounting the final period. The notes of Murari Gupta form the basis of the Ādi-līlā, and Swarup Damodar's diary provides the details for the Madhya and the Anta Leela. So now coming to the content of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. The first 12 chapters of Ādi-līlā constitute the preface for the entire book. The first 12 chapters, as I said, the philosophical truth of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates is established. By referring to Vedic scriptural evidence, Krishnadas Kaviraj establishes that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the avatar incarnation of God for the age of Kali, the current epoch, which began 5,000 years ago and is characterized by materialism, hypocrisy, and dissension. The author also proved that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is identical to Lord Krishna and explained that he descends to liberally grant the fallen souls of this degraded age pure love of God by propagating Sankirtan, literally congregation glorification of God, especially by organizing massive public chanting of Mahamantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. In addition, in the first 12 chapters preface, Krishnadas Kaviraj reveals the esoteric purpose of Lord Chaitanya's appearance in the world. So what is the purpose of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance? Why he appears? And how rare is his appearance? Describes his co-avatars. What are the co-avatars? There are Nityanand Prabhu and there is Advaita Prabhu. So these three are the Prabhu. These are called the Prabhu Traya. And his associates, his principal devotees, and summarizes his teachings in the remaining portion of Ādi-līlā, which is chapter 13 till 17. Only 5 chapters. The author briefly recounts Lord Chaitanya's divine birth and his life until he accepted the renounced order. If you see this Ādi-līlā in the 5 chapters only, from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birth till his taking sannyas, is very summarily, it is very briefly presented by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. If we see Vrindavan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Bhagavat, the entire Adi Khanda and Madhya Khanda and even the Sesha Khanda talks about this. So the details are there of Navadip Leela in Chaitanya Bhagavat. And summarization is only there in Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. The accounts include his childhood miracles, schooling, marriage, and early philosophical confrontations, as well as his organization of a widespread Sankirtan movement and his civil disobedience against the repression of Muslim government. The Madhya Leela, the longest of the 3 divisions, narrates in detail Lord Chaitanya's extensive and eventful travels throughout India as a renounced mendicant, teacher, philosopher, spiritual preceptor, and mystic. During this period of 6 years, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu transmits his teachings to his principal disciples. He debates and converts many of the renowned philosophers and theologians of his time, including Shankarites, Buddhists, and Muslims, and incorporates their many thousands of followers and disciples into his own burgeoning numbers. The author also includes in this section a dramatic account of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's miraculous activities at the giant Rath Yatra in Jagannath Puri. So that is all part of Ādi-līlā. How Chaitanya Mahaprabhu participated in Rath Yatra. The Ādi-līlā concerns the last 18 years of Śrī Caitanya's presence spent in semi-seclusion near the famous Jagannath Puri temple in Puri, that is in Gambhira. During this final year, Śrī Krishna Chaitanya drifted deeper and deeper into the trances of spiritual ecstasy, unparalleled in all of religious and literary history. Eastern or Western, his perpetual and ever-increasing religious beatitude, graphically described in the eyewitnesses' account of Sarup Damodar Goswami, his constant companion during this period, clearly defy the investigative and descriptive abilities of modern psychologists and phenomenologists of religious experience. So that is the very high esoteric ecstasies of deep devotion which was experienced by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was so restricted that only 3.5% were allowed to accompany or witness what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did in his last 18 years. The author of this great classic, Krishnadas Kaviraj, born around the beginning of the 16th century, was a disciple. So if we want to know the book, then we should know the author also. So who is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami? He is the disciple of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, the great Raghunath Das Goswami, the Prayojan Acharya, a confidential follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's. Raghunath Das, a renounced ascetic saint, heard and memorized all the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told to him by Sarup Damodar Goswami. So this is how the Chaitanya Caritāmṛta is coming, how the linkage is. As I said, because in the Ādi-līlā, the first 12 chapters are dedicated in establishing the tattva, the truth of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is most philosophical. Hardly anything of Munari Gupta is mentioned in this first 12 chapters. So the more elaborate description of Chaitanya Caritāmṛta of Chaitanya Leela is coming from Sarup Damodar Goswami. And what is the linkage of Chaitanya Caritāmṛta with Sarup Damodar Goswami? That Raghunath Das Goswami was under the care and shelter of Srila Sarup Damodar Goswami in Jagannath Puri. When Raghunath Das Goswami came and took shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Puri, when he fled from his house, when he left all the opulences and came and took shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu handed him over to Sarup Damodar Goswami and told him that Sarup Damodar Goswami will teach you and train you. So Raghunath Das Goswami had the good fortune of being the personal assistant and associate of Sarup Damodar Goswami. And as it is mentioned here, that he heard and memorized all the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told by him by Sarup Damodar Goswami. So Sarup Damodar Goswami gave all details about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Raghunath Das Goswami, he memorized it in his heart. And later, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu unfolded his pastimes, so unable to bear the separation in Puri, Raghunath Das Goswami, he came to take shelter and association of Srila Rup and Sanatan Goswami. He relocated to Vrindavan. And when he came to Vrindavan, he was feeling so much of separation that he wanted to terminate his existence. But at that time, the Vaishnavas requested him that because you have had such association of Srila Sarup Damodar Goswami and you have all the details of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so every day you should give discourse on the life and teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At that time, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, although he was very elderly, he was in Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, the chosen place was Radhakund. Every day in the evening, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami used to give a very detailed discourse for 4 to 5 hours. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, in his very advanced age of almost 90 years, he would be the student of Raghunath Das Goswami and he would take detailed notes. And based on his hearing from Raghunath Das Goswami and the notes he prepared, he presented Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. It is not ordinary. If we are hearing from the bona fide sources, we are hearing from Srila Prabhupada, we are making notes, and we are aligning our hearts to hear, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will utilize us in his service. We don't know to what extent. Obviously not to the extent to what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has been done. This is the parampara system of hearing, and while hearing, preparing notes. This is how Raghunath Das Goswami did, and the same was followed by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. After the passing away of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarup Damodar, Raghunath Das, unable to bear the pain of separation from these objects of his complete devotion, traveled to Vrindavan intending to commit suicide by jumping from Govardhan Hill. In Vrindavan, however, he encountered Srila Rup Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, two of the most confidential disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They convinced him to give up his planned suicide and impelled him to reveal to them the spiritually inspiring events of Lord Chaitanya's later life. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was also residing in Vrindavan at that time, and Raghunath Das Goswami endowed him with a full comprehension of the transcendental life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So many were hearing, many were there in that assembly of Sri Raghunath Das Goswami. But not everyone could present Chaitanya Caritāmṛta. Only one soul, and that is Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. How? Because he was hearing with such intent. And not only he was hearing, he was making notes. By this time, contemporary and near contemporary scholars and devotees has already written several biographical works on the life of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These included Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta by Murari Gupta. That was the principal, the first work of Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. It is called Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta Kavya by Murari Gupta. Chaitanya Mangal by Lochan Das Thakur, and Chaitanya Bhagvat by Vrindavan Das Thakur, who was then considered the principal authority of Śrī Chaitanya's life, was highly revered. While composing his important work, Vrindavan Das, fearing that it would become too voluminous, avoided elaborate describing of many events of Śrī Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, particularly the later ones. So because, as I said, Chaitanya Bhagvat, a great detail and length is given of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's early childhood and his pastimes in Navadip. Very voluminous. Out of Chaitanya Bhagvat, 3/4 of it is covered before the sannyas. So he feared that if he would give the later pastimes also, the book will become very voluminous. So what he did, he summarized, or he had not presented much of later pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anxious to hear of the later pastimes, the devotees in Vrindavan requested Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, whom they respected as a great saint and scholar, to compose a book narrating these episodes in detail. Upon their request, and with the permission and blessings of Madan Mohan deity of Vrindavan, he began compiling Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. So it is said that when Chaitanya Caritāmṛta was being composed by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, his age was beyond 90. And in that very advanced old age, his hand would shiver. Very difficult even to hold the pen. And his eyes, they would, when the person is becoming old, the eyelids become closed. He could not walk, he could not write, he could not hear, but still this magic was done, this miracle was done. How? Because when all the devotees requested him to write Chaitanya Caritāmṛta, So he went to the deity of Sri Madan Mohanji, the Sambandha deity. And he very frequently prayed to Madan Mohanji that if you empower, then only it will be possible. That is why that verse is there. Jayatam Shutor Pango, Mama Manda Mater Gatir. That by your mercy, what can happen? That a lame man, person who is lame, he can cross over the mountains. So how one can cross over the mountains? By empowerment and mercy. And the live example of that is Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And at that time, when he was praying in front of the deity of Madan Mohanji, the garland from Madan Mohanji, it fell. It fell down, and the Pujari handed over the garland to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, saying that this is the Ashirvad of Madan Mohanji. He began compiling Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, which due to his literary excellence and philosophical thoroughness is today universally regarded as the foremost work on the life and profound teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada presented it, and so now the main biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami commenced work on the text at a very advanced stage and in his failing health. As he vividly described in the text itself, I have now become too old and disturbed by invalidity. While writing, my hands tremble. I cannot remember anything, nor can I see or hear properly. Still I write, and this is great wonder, that he completed the greatest literary gem of medieval India under such debilitating conditions is surely one of the wonders of literary history. As mentioned above, this English translation and commentary is the work of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the world's most distinguished teacher of Indian religion and philosophical thought. Srila Prabhupada's commentary is based upon two Bengali commentaries. One of his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Goswami, the eminent Vedic scholar, teacher and saint who predicted, the time will come when people of the world will learn Bengali to read Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. And I have witnessed it myself. When I first went to Mayapur in 2006, there in Champahati, in front of the deities of Gaur Gadadhar, I could see an English Mataji, whose body is not Indian, English. She was reading Caitanya-Caritāmṛta in Bangla. And I was completely astounded. I was new. I could not believe. I stood there for more than 10 minutes to witness whether this is true. So this is the sweetness of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. That the non-Indians, the non-Bengalis, they will learn Bangla to relish the Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. And this was predicted by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur and Bhakti Vinod Thakur both. The time will come when people of this world will learn Bengali to read Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. So many Prabhupada disciples, foremost of them, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj, and so many others who have studied and who have commanded the language of Bangla to be able to relish Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. And the other by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's father and instructing spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, his Amrit Prabha Bhashya. Prabhupada, you will see when we will read Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, Prabhupada very profusely quotes from Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur's Amrit Prabha Bhashya, who pioneered the propagation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching in the modern era. Srila Prabhupada is himself a disciplic descendant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and is the first scholar to execute systematic English translation of major work of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's followers. So far before Prabhupada, all the writings of all the acharyas coming in Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara, they were only in two languages, either in Sanskrit or in Bangla, up to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So it is to the credit of Srila Prabhupada that he has made this transcendental literature accessible to us by giving the translation in Hindi. Otherwise, it would not be possible. I remember for so many years before the Lochan Das Thakur's commentary came in by Sarv Sakshi Prabhu, if I would get Lochan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Mangal, it was only Bangla Payor. When it was written in Bangla and there was no purports. So many times I scratched my head, but nothing I could make out. One or two shlokas very difficult to even get some understanding. His consummate Bengali and Sanskrit scholarship and his intimate familiarity with the precepts of Śrī Krishna Chaitanya are a fitting combination that eminently qualifies him to present this important classic to the English-speaking world. The ease and clarity with which he expounds upon difficult philosophical concepts enable even a reader totally unfamiliar with the Indian religious tradition to understand and appreciate this profound and monumental work. So there are so many witnesses, so many souls across the world. I remember one revelation by His Holiness Indudam Swami Maharaj. Indudam Swami Maharaj is a very dedicated disciple of Srila Prabhupada and a very prolific preacher. He preaches and performs very big festivals in the West, mainly in European countries. So once he was organizing a very big, he performs the Woodstock festival, very famous. And in that festival, one Polish person came who knew nothing about Krishna consciousness. But somehow he got a copy of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta and he had read Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. And he came and he inquired from Indudam Maharaj. Maharaj was organizing a Rath Yatra. So all their lordships, Lord Jagannath, Baldev and Subhadra and Sudarshan were on one cart. Normally we see now that we don't have 3 carts. So he came and said to Maharaj that what kind of Rath Yatra is this? I have read in Caitanya-Caritāmṛta that there are 3 different carts for their lordships. And Maharaj was stunned. That how this man who knows nothing about Indian religious tradition, he has understood what Rath Yatra is and how the details of the Rath Yatra is only because of Srila Prabhupada's monumental work. The entire text with commentary presented by Bhakti Vedanta Book Trust represents a contribution of major importance to the intellectual, cultural and spiritual life of contemporary people. So this is the purpose of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, which is presented by Srila Prabhupada. And BBT devotees, as I said, Prabhupada said that impossible is the name of, impossible is the word in the Fool's Dictionary. So 9 volumes of book were presented within 18 months. 18 years work was done in just 18 months. Why? Because Prabhupada had very little time. So I'll read first the preface, which is given by Srila Prabhupada. There is no, so this is very spectacular. When I first, I was started to, do service of speaking Bhagavatam. Once my coordinator, the devotee who gives the structure and schedule for classes, he gave me Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. So I told him that no, I have not studied Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, so I will not be able to speak on Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. But he insisted me that I don't have any other speaker, so you have to speak. Whatever you know, you speak. So when I first opened Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, so I read the preface. And this is what Srila Prabhupada is speaking in the preface. He says, there is no difference between the teachings of Lord Chaitanya presented here and the teachings of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. This first sentence gave me so much of solace and so much of confidence that yes, we can also access Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, because if we know Bhagavad Gita, then Caitanya-Caritāmṛta is natural. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are practical demonstrations of Lord Krishna's teaching. So the principles which Krishna is presenting in Bhagavad Gita is all demonstrated graphically in Chaitanya-Līlā. Lord Krishna's ultimate instruction in the Bhagavad Gita is that everyone should surrender unto him, Lord Krishna. Krishna promises to take immediate charge of such a surrendered soul. The Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is already in charge of the maintenance of this creation by virtue of his plenary expansions, Shirodakshai Vishnu. But this maintenance is not direct. However, when the Lord says that he takes charge of his pure devotee, he actually takes direct charge. So this is the difference. The creation and maintenance is not done directly by the Supreme Lord. For there, this activity, he has his expansions and expansions of expansions. And the example is given here of Shirodakshai Vishnu. But that is not the case for his devotees. This is what Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing. That he takes direct charge for his pure devotee. A pure devotee is a soul who is forever surrendered to the Lord, just as a child is surrendered to his parents or an animal to his master. In the surrendering process, one should accept things favorably for discharging devotional service. What is the principle? We have discussed many times. Accept things favorably for discharging devotional service. What is this principle?
Anukulasya sankalpa.
Yes, very good. Anukulasya sankalpaha. And pratikulasya varjanam. Reject things unfavorably. Firmly believe that Lord Krishna will always protect his devotees. This is Vishwas. This is firm faith. Feel exclusive dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Then have no separate interest from the interest of the Lord and always feel meek and humble. So there are the sixfold levels of surrender. It is called Sharanagati. Anukulasya sankalpaha, pratikulasya varjanam, avasya rakhive Krishna, vishwasya palana. Then guptrutva varnan, that Krishna is always going to maintain me. There is no doubt. And dainiya, that he is always humble and meek. So whoever practices bhakti in this way, such a person is in the path of process of surrendering. And for such a devotee, the Supreme Lord takes direct charge. So we will see in Chaitanya-Līlā, whenever we will go to his associates. So all those devotees have these 6 attributes. Then, Shadang Sharanagati Hoibe Jahar Tahar Prarthana Sune Shri Nanda Kumar. So what is the process of Sharanagati? One is firmly fixed on these 6 principles. The Lord demands that one surrender unto him by following the 6 guidelines. But the unintelligent so-called scholars of the world misunderstand these demands and urge the general mass of people to reject them. So Chaitanya Charitamrita is not for the general mass because they do not understand the 6 guidelines. At the conclusion of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna directly orders, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me alone, and offer obeisances unto me alone. Which verse is this? Very famous. 9.34. No one knows.
Manmana madmad bhakto.
Yeah. Manmana bhava bhakto madhyaji mam. And by so doing, the Lord says one is sure to go to him in his transcendental abode. And Prabhupada's comprehension, Prabhupada said, but the scholarly demons, Prabhupada uses the word demons for so-called scholars, misguide the mass of people by directing him to surrender not to the personality of Godhead, but rather to the impersonal, unmanifested, eternal, unborn truth. The impersonalist Mayavadi philosophers do not accept that the ultimate aspect of the absolute truth is the supreme personality of Godhead. If one desires to understand the sun as it is, one must first face the sunshine and then the sun globe. And then, if one is able to enter into that globe, one may come face to face with the predominating deity of the sun. Due to poor fund of knowledge, the Mayavadi philosophers cannot go beyond the Brahmal effulgence, which may be compared to the sunshine. The Upanishads confirm that one has to penetrate the dazzling effulgence of Brahman before one can see the real face of the personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya therefore taught direct worship of Lord Krishna, who appeared as the foster child of the king of Braja. Lord Chaitanya also taught that the place known as Vrindavan is as good as Lord Krishna, because Lord Krishna, being the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, there is no difference between him and his name, qualities, form, pastimes, entourage, and phenomena. Very famous verse. Anyone knows this verse? This is in glorification of the Supreme Lord and the abode Vrindavan. It is the most popular verse of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas for glorifying Lord Krishna in Vrindavan and the Vrindavan Dham, which speaks about how Krishna is the foster child of King of Praja. Bolo bhai, so many times I have spoken on that verse. You see how what we are hearing and how Acharyas are hearing. Raghunath Das Goswami heard once, it was memorized forever. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami heard and he presented the book, Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. Āradhyo Bhagavan Vrajesh Tanaya Tad Dhamam Vrindavanam. Ramya Kajit Upasana Vajvadu Vargena Vakalpita. Okay. Lord Chaitanya also taught that the mood of worshipping the Lord in the highest perfectional stage is the method prescribed by the damsels of Braja. Āradhyo Bhagavan Vrajesh Tanaya Tad Dhamam Vrindavanam Ramya Kajit Upasana Vajvadu. So the highest form of worship is the worship of the gopis, the damsels of Braja. These damsel gopis or cowherd girls simply loved Krishna without any motive for material or spiritual gain. Lord Chaitanya also taught that Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless narration of transcendental knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramana Amalam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has established this. This is the highest goal in human life, is to develop unalloyed love for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya's teaching are identical to those given by Lord Kapila, the original propounder of Sankhya Yoga. So Prabhupada is contrasting and Prabhupada is mentioning here that there is nothing new. The Sankhya system of philosophy, the authorized system of yoga teaches meditation on the transcendental form of the Lord. There is no question of meditating on something void or impersonal. When one can meditate on the transcendental form of Lord Vishnu even without practicing, involving sitting postures in a secluded place, such meditation is called perfect samadhi. When one can meditate on the transcendental form of Lord Vishnu. So then those postures, those various processes are not required. Why? Because in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that of all yogis, the greatest is one who constantly thinks of the Lord within the core of his heart with love and devotion. What is the verse? Kana? Final verse of 6th chapter. Wall slipping, skipping, forgetting. So many of you know, should be knowing. Pradeep, what is the verse? You are there, Pradeep Prabhu? Pradeep also video is off. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam samay yukta tamomata. So all the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are at that level. Yukta tama mataha. Their mati is yukta tamaha. That means they are in constant meditation of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. On the basis of Sankhya philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bhed Tattva, which maintains that the Supreme Lord is simultaneously one with and different from his creation, Lord Chaitanya taught that the most practical way for the mass of people to practice Sankhya Yoga meditation is simply to chant the holy names of the Lord. He taught that the holy name of the Lord is the sound incarnation of the Lord, and since the Lord is the absolute whole, there is no difference between his holy name and his transcendental form. So in Kali Yuga, the Supreme Lord, he advents or he appears in his sound incarnation. And what is that sound incarnation? The Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Thus, by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can directly associate with the Supreme Lord by sound vibration. As one practices chanting this sound vibration, one passes through 3 stages of development. So that is what we are experiencing. What is the first stage? Is the offensive stage. So what kind of naam we are chanting? It is aprad yukta. It is not aprad mukta. It is aprad yukta. It is the offensive stage. How? Because the 10 offenses which we know we should strictly avoid, we are not avoiding. But as one continues, this is also amazing. As one continues to chant, he does not give up the process of chanting. It is inevitable that he will be promoted to the second stage, which is called the clearing stage, or that is called the Nam Abhas. Abhas, Abhas means the reflection. Like when in the morning, the example is given, when before the sun rises, before you see the sun, the visibility is there. The darkness is gone of the night. You can see things, although the sun has not risen. So that is the Nam Abhas stage, or that is called the clearing stage. Where Abhas, the mere reflection of the name, starts to manifest. And the third stage is the pure stage, is the Shuddha Nam. As one practices chanting this sound vibration, one passes through 3 stages of development: the offensive stage, the clearing stage, and the transcendental stage. In the offensive stage of chanting, one may desire all kinds of material happiness. But in the second stage, one becomes clear of all material contaminations. When one is situated on the transcendental stage, one attains the most coveted position, the stage of loving God. Lord Chaitanya taught that this is the highest stage of perfection for human beings. Yoga practice is essentially meant for controlling the senses. The central controlling factor for all the senses is the mind. Therefore, one first has to practice controlling the mind by engaging it in Krishna consciousness. So what is the austerity in chanting? The only one thing that we have to concentrate in chanting is to hear the mantra. Because how the hearing will be happening is through the participation of the mind. If we are able to hear the mantra, the mind will become purified. And if we do not hear, and if we hear the mind, then the clearing stage remains prolonged. So here Prabhupada is emphasizing again. So Prabhupada has always said that what we have to do while chanting, we have to hear the mantra. All attention should be there that we are hearing the mantra. The gross activities of the mind are expressed through the external senses, either for the acquisition of knowledge or for the functioning of the senses in accordance with the will. The subtle activities of the mind are thinking, feeling, and willing, which are carried out according to one's consciousness, either polluted or clear. If one's mind is fixed on Krishna, his name, qualities, form, pastimes, entourage, and paraphernalia, all one's activity, both subtle and gross, become favorable. So how that can happen is by the process of hearing. The Bhagavad Gita's process of purifying consciousness is the process of fixing one mind by Krishna by talking of his transcendental activities, cleansing his temple, going to his temple, seeing the beautiful transcendental form of the Lord nicely decorated, hearing his transcendental glories, tasting his offered food, associating with his devotees, smelling the flowers and tulsi leaves offered to him, engaging in activities for the Lord's interest, becoming angry to those who are malicious towards devotees. No one can bring the activities of the mind and senses to a stop, but one can purify these activities through the change in consciousness. This change is indicated in the Bhagavad Gita 2.39, where Krishna tells Arjuna of the knowledge of the yoga, whereby one can work without fruitive results. O son of Partha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of birth. Buddhya yukto yaya Partha karma bandhan prahasyasi. A human being is sometimes restricted in sense gratification due to certain circumstances, such as disease. But such prescriptions are for less intelligent. Without knowledge and actual process by which the mind and senses can be controlled, less intelligent men may try to stop the mind and senses by force, but ultimately they give in to them and are carried away by the waves of sense gratification. The 8 principles of Sankhya Yoga, observing the regulative principles, following the rules, practicing the various sitting postures, performing the breathing exercises, withdrawing one's senses from the sense objects. What are they? This is Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, Dhyan, Dharana, and Samadhi. So what Prabhupada is saying are meant for those who are much engrossed in the bodily conception of life. This is not for the intelligent man situated in Krishna consciousness. Does not try to forcibly stop his senses from acting. Rather, he engages his senses in the service of Krishna. No one can stop a child from playing by leaving him inactive. Rather, one can stop the child from engaging in nonsense by engaging him in superior activities. Similarly, the forceful restraint of sense activities by the 8 principles of yoga is recommended for inferior men. Superior men, being engaged in the superior activities of Krishna consciousness, naturally retire from the inferior activities of material existence. So Prabhupada is saying that negation is not the solution. What is the solution? Is the right engagement. What is the right engagement? Activities in Krishna consciousness. In this way, Lord Chaitanya teaches us the science of Krishna consciousness. That science is absolute. Dry mental speculators try to restrain themselves from material attachment. But it is generally found that the mind is too strong to be controlled and that it drags them down to sensual activities. A person in Krishna consciousness does not run this risk. One therefore has to engage one's mind and senses in Krishna conscious activities. The Lord Chaitanya teaches one how to do this in practice. That is why Chaitanya-līlā is the practical demonstration of Bhagavad Gita. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches one how to engage one's mind and senses in Krishna consciousness. Before accepting sannyas, the renounced Lord Chaitanya was known as Vishwambhara. The word Vishwambhara refers to one who maintains the entire universe, one who leads all living entities. This very same maintainer and leader appeared as Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya to give humanity these sublime teachings. Lord Chaitanya is an ideal teacher of life's prime necessities. He is the most munificent bestower of love of Krishna. He is the complete reservoir of all mercies and good fortune. As confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, and the Upanishads, he is the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, and he is worshipable by everyone in this age of disagreement. Everyone can join in his Sankirtan movement. No previous qualification is necessary. Just by following his teachings, anyone can become a perfect human being. Anyone who is fortunate enough to be attracted by Lord Chaitanya is sure to be successful in his life mission. So how to be attracted to Lord Chaitanya? To go to his pastime places, hear about him. In other words, those who are interested in attaining spiritual existence can easily be released from the clutches of Maya by the grace of Lord Chaitanya. The teaching presented in this book are not different from the law. Srila Prabhupada is presenting what? Prabhupada is presenting in his books the love of Lord Chaitanya himself. The conditioned soul engrossed in the material body increases the pages of history by all kinds of material activities. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya can help the members of human society stop such unnecessary and temporary activities and be elevated to the topmost platform of spiritual activities, which begin after liberation from material bondage. Such liberated activities in Krishna consciousness constitute the goal of human perfection. What is that stage called in Bhagavad Gita? Prabhupada says that these spiritual activities begin after liberation. It is called the Brahma Bhuta stage. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labate para. When one comes to that platform of being liberated, then the real activities in Krishna consciousness begin. That is what Prabhupada is saying, which begin after liberation from material bondage. Such liberated activities in Krishna consciousness constitute the goal of human perfection. The false prestige one acquires by attempting to dominate material nature is illusionary. Illuminating knowledge can be acquired by studying the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and by such knowledge one can advance in spiritual existence. Everyone has to suffer or enjoy the fruits of his activities. No one can check the laws of material nature that govern such things. As long as one is engaged in fruitive activities, one is sure to be baffled in the attempt to attain the ultimate goal of life. I sincerely hope that by understanding the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, human society will experience a new light of spiritual life, which will open the field of activity for the pure soul. Om Tat Sat. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, March 14, 1968, the birthday of Lord Chaitanya, Śrī Radha Krishna Temple, New York. So what to do? The time is over. And okay, I will leave it here. Tomorrow we will begin with the introduction. So I am praying, and I'm also trying to prepare to be in the right consciousness, to be able to be in Navadip Dham. So I don't want to diffuse to go to any other scripture or any other discussion or any other engagement. Try to prepare our heart, our mind in such a way that we enter into the realms of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime. And the best way is to very attentively hear, like we see in the Acharyas. This is how they entered. They have entered only through the parampara system of hearing and glorifying. One of the main focus of our yatra will be the hearing of Caitanya-Caritāmṛta. We will see how much we are allowed and how much discipline we maintain. I will try to read from 13 to 17 chapters. There will be 5 chapters which summarizes all of Navadip pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So before coming to the pastimes, most important is to know what is the principle in these pastimes. What is exhibited by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So my attempt is in the next, we have 4 more days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Saturday, I have to give the spiritual scientist class. So in 4 days, we will at least try to touch the tattva of what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is and who his associates are, what level they are. Thank you very much. Śrī Caitanya-Caritāmṛta ki jai. Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Upasthit Sabhi Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. I am ending here. I don't want to stretch till 9. Hare Krishna. So tomorrow, please try to join at 7:30. Let us be strict. Let us have from 7:30 to 8:30 so that we can all sleep in time. Most important is not only our mind, but our body also should be fully relaxed. When we reach the dham, we should not be fatigued or tired. Hare Krishna.